Welcome to The Runner Soul, the podcast where running meets science, stride by stride. And as ever, I'm Sharon, your resident podiatrist. So today we'll be talking about spotting the signs, diagnosing plantar fasciitis, and telling it apart from other heel pain. Let's kick right off. All right, runners, lace up. And let's dive into today's stride. I bet you're all looking forward to this. I know I am. In our last episode, we broke down the causes and the risk factors for plantar fasciitis. We went through everything from overloading the fascia to poor shoe choices, foot mechanics, and recovery gaps. And we ended with one big question. How do you actually know if the heel pain you're feeling is plantar fasciitis and not something else? And that's exactly what today's episode's all about. We're going to walk through the key signs and symptoms of plantar fasciitis, some self-tests that you can try at home, and the process podiatrists like myself use to confirm the diagnosis. We'll also cover other conditions that can mimic plantar fasciitis. They can have similar symptoms, but not all heel pain is created equal. So, by the end of this episode, you will know not only what plantar fasciitis feels like, but also how to separate it from other heel pain culprits. The classic hallmark symptom of plantar fasciitis. Let's start with the number one classic telltale sign of plantar fasciitis, and that is your first step pain in the mornings.
Ouch!
If you've ever rolled out of bed in the morning and felt that stabbing, knife-like pain in the bottom of your heel as soon as your foot hits the ground, well, that is plantar fasciitis talking. So, why morning pain, you'll ask? Well, because overnight you're not moving and your fascia is like sleeping like a baby and there's no pressure on it. So when you're not moving, your fascia tightens and it contracts like a muscle does. So then when you take your first step out of bed, it stretches it really suddenly and all that weight is put onto it. And then if there are those micro tears we've been telling you about, you'll feel them really loud and clear. The pain usually eases a little as you move around. And because the fascia warms up and stretches, but here's the kicker. It often comes roaring back after long periods of the sitting or the standing still, or even after exercise, which is very annoying, I know. Does that sound familiar? If you're nodding right now, you are not alone. This pattern is the most common experience my patients describe, and it's one of the biggest red flags for plantar fasciitis. And when I say you're not alone, you just have to mention to anybody, stranger in the street, your boss at work, a colleague, just mention the word plantar fasciitis and it will just open up a whole conversation. They'll be telling you about the people they know, they've had it, their wife's had it, their bosses had it, the nurse at the hospital's had it. So it's very, 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 very common. So you are not alone. You are not alone, and we are here to help. Another key sign is where the pain lives. And for that reason, location is the key. Because plantar fasciitis pain usually sits right at the bottom of your heel, especially near the inside edge where the fascia anchors into the heel bone. So if you press around that area and feel tenderness, that's another strong clue that we're dealing with plantar fasciitis. Some patients describe it as a sharp stabbing pain. Others say it's more of like a dull ache that flares into stabbing pain with certain movements. Either way, it's usually not on the outside of the heel or deep in the ankle. That would definitely point us in a different direction, and we will give you a different diagnosis. And now the question I want to ask is, what does the pain feel like and how does it progress? Now, let's talk about how the pain itself behaves over time. So in the early stages, it feels sharp, those first steps in the morning. As it becomes more chronic, it can turn into a constant dull ache that flares upon activity. Some runners say it feels like a stone or a pebble that's just stuck in their shoe. Others feel it radiates along the arch of the foot. But either way, without treatment, the fascia can develop small tears and thickening. That's when the pain can last all day and start limiting not just your running, but even your standing and walking, which makes any activity so painful. I'm going to give you some self-tests that you can try yourself at home. There's a few simple ones that you can try that often point strongly towards plantar fasciitis, or not, as the case may be. So there's 3 of them I'm going to tell you about. The first one is the heel press test. So you sit down, cross your legs, and press your thumb into the bottom of your heel near the arch. Is it sharp? Tenderness? That's a big clue. The second is the windlass test. For that test, you stand on a step or a little block and you put your toes of your painful foot on the edge, and then you let your heel drop down. Now gently lift your big toe upwards with your hand. If that creates your heel pain, it suggests strain in the fascia. And then the morning step test. Simply notice what happens the first 5 or 10 steps out of bed in the morning. If you feel like the pain is sharp and then it eases, that's another classic sign. Now, none of these tests are perfect, of course, on their own. Nothing's 100%. But together, they do give you an indicator and your clinician. So it's very, very helpful information. When you come to see a podiatrist like myself, here's some of the things we do to diagnose the process of what's actually happening. So first of all, we'll take a history. And during the history, we'll ask detailed questions about when the pain started, what makes it worse, and what you've tried already. Of course, timing is everything here. Then we'll go into the physical exam. We'll press on the heel, test the arch, check your calf flexibility, look at how you stand, how you walk, your gait. We'll look at your footwear. We'll chat to you about, what do you wear when you're walking around the house? And then sometimes we might go on to do some imaging, because in most cases, plantar fasciitis can be diagnosed without imaging. But sometimes we might use that ultrasound to look at the fascia's thickness and just see, what kind of damage might be done, or even an X-ray to rule out things like a stress fracture or heel spurs. So the goal isn't just to confirm plantar fasciitis, it's also to rule out the other lookalikes that might seem to mimic plantar fasciitis, but is maybe not plantar fasciitis. We're going to talk now about some heel pain lookalikes. So we refer to this as differential diagnosis. Here's where things get really interesting because heel pain isn't always plantar fasciitis. So let's look at some common imposters. The first one being the heel spur. These are little bony growths that can form on the heel bone. And a fun fact is many people with heel spurs don't have pain. And many with plantar fasciitis don't have spurs. Spurs and plantar fasciitis often get confused, and you can see why. And then we have the stress fractures. They are little tiny cracks in the heel bone from overuse. Unlike plantar fasciitis, the pain usually worsens with activity and doesn't ease as much with rest. And the next bad boy is nerve entrapment. That's a compressed nerve near the heel. It can cause burning, tingling, or shooting pain, different from the stabbing fascia pain of plantar fasciitis. And then next on our list is a bursitis. That is inflammation of the small fluid sacs near the heel. Pain there tends to feel more kind of swollen and achy, as if it's inflamed, that inflamed feeling. And then we go on to the tarsal tunnel syndrome. Think of it as the carpal tunnel for your foot. Nerve pain in the ankle and the heel that can mimic plantar fasciitis, but it's coming from a different source. That is why a proper exam matters, because treatment for each of these are different, because they're caused by different things. And so we want to, give each thing the solution that it requires in order for to heal it completely. So then you can just say goodbye to whatever is causing the problem. So let me give you a case story. And this is a story about misdiagnosis and a runner who should have known better. So I'll share a quick story about a patient I had, an avid marathon runner who was convinced he had plantar fasciitis because the area around the heel hurt. He tried rolling his foot on a frozen water bottle. He did all the calf stretches. He did the whole internet treatment checklist. Nothing worked. Well, he finally came in and we sent him for some imaging. And it turned out he had a stress fracture in his heel bone. So all that self-treatment was actually delaying his healing. But once we got him into proper rest, supportive boots, and made him, just keep off the heel until it healed, pain resolved. So the moral of the story is heel pain, it might look like plantar fasciitis, but it's not always what it seems. And that's why you need to speak to the professional, because you could be nursing something thinking that's one thing and then it's actually something else. And, especially with a stress fracture, you can actually do more damage to the bone if you don't find out what it is and allow it to heal. Because, of course, the heel area it's difficult to heal because the heel is difficult to heal. That sounds like a joke. And the reason for that is because it's an area of constant pressure. And so it's difficult to stay off your feet. It's difficult to stay off your heel because you need your heels when you want to go to the bathroom, when you want to go put the kettle on, when you want to go make something to eat. So it is really important that we can, differentiate what's what. Now let's bust a few myths. So here are some common myths about diagnosis. So the first myth is number 1. And that is, you've probably heard people say, oh, heel spurs cause plantar fasciitis. Well, that's not actually true. They can exist without pain, and treating the fascia often relieves the pain even if the spur stays. Myth number 2. If the plantar fasciitis, if it is that, you'll feel pain all the time. No. It often comes and goes, especially in the early stages. You might find that, first thing in the morning, it's very painful. And then as you start moving throughout the day, it eases off and then it comes back. And then the myth 3, only runners get plantar fasciitis. Well, that is wrong. I see it often in teachers, warehouse workers, retail staff, policemen, even kids, although it's not as common, but even kids can get plantar fasciitis. Retail staff, it's very common for them because they're standing all day on, it's a long shift, and, they're a lot of the time they're standing on concrete and tiles. So anyone really who spends long hours on their feet, especially on sort of man-made surfaces like concrete, tiles, etc. But knowing these myths kind of helps you focus on what actually matters for the diagnosis. So let's wrap up today's stride. So now we have recap and key takeaways. The hallmark symptom of plantar fasciitis is that stabbing first step pain in the morning. Real giveaway. Pain, it's usually at the bottom of the heel near the inside edge. It may ease with movement as you get going, but will pretty much return after rest or heavy activity. Self-tests like the windlass test can give you clues, but clinical exams are the gold standard. So don't listen to everything Google tells you. Not all heel pain is plantar fasciitis, which we've learned. It could be a stress fracture, could be nerve issues, a bursitis. These are all common mimics. Diagnosis, it's not about guessing. It's about ruling things in, ruling things out to get the correct diagnosis for you. And that takes us to the next stride in our plantar fasciitis journey. Because once you know it is plantar fasciitis, the real question becomes, what the hell do you do about it? So in episode 5, we'll dive straight into treatment options that actually work. Everything from at-home stretches and rolling to shoes and orthotics to medical interventions. We'll break down what actually works, what likely won't work, and how to avoid wasting time on gimmicks. And not just time, wasting money. So before we close, a little something to look forward to in episode 6. We will feature a very special runner's toolbox kit. It's a collection of meaningful, practical tips designed to help you run smarter, stay motivated, and feel your very best. Trust me, you'll want this one. And hey, I would love for you all to join our community on Facebook. Please join our family. It's a great place where you can share your stories, connect with real people, and keep the conversation going beyond the podcast. I'll drop the link in the show notes so you can join us there. So lace up, guys. Take care of your heels this week, and I'll see you next time on The Runner's Soul.